Have you ever wondered how the liberation of 23 million Russian serfs in 1861 could have systemically affected Russian society and land use? Picture a Russia in flux, a society grappling with the implications of one of the most sweeping reforms of the 19th century. Imagine the ripple effect on land utilization, on social dynamics, on the very fabric of Russian life. Stay tuned as we unravel the layers of this monumental event in Russian history. To understand the significance of the emancipation, we must first delve into the world of serfdom in Russia. Imagine a world where your life, your work, and your family are all subject to the whims of another. This was the reality for millions of serfs in pre-emancipation Russia. Serfdom was a system that tied the peasant population to the land, and, by extension, to the landowner. These serfs were not slaves per se, but their lives were dictated by the landlords who owned the estates on which they toiled. The life of a serf was far from easy. Their days were filled with back-breaking labor, tending to the fields and taking care of livestock. The fruits of their labor, however, did not belong to them. Instead, they were required to give a significant portion of their produce to the landlord as a form of rent for the land they worked on. But the landlords held more than just economic power over the serfs. They had the authority to punish them, to increase their workload, and even to sell them along with the land. A serf could be separated from their family, uprooted from their home, and sent to a new estate at the landlord's whim. This system of serfdom wasn't just a cruel and oppressive institution, it was also a fundamental part of the social and economic fabric of Russia. The landlords, or nobility, were the ruling class, wielding immense power and influence. The serfs, on the other hand, were seen as little more than property, a commodity to be bought and sold. Yet, despite the hardships, the serfs formed tight-knit communities, finding solace and strength in their shared struggle. Their lives were intertwined with the seasons and the soil, their customs and traditions shaped by the rhythm of rural life. The world of serfdom was a world of stark contrasts, of power and powerlessness, of wealth and poverty, of freedom and bondage. It was a world that was about to be upended, a world on the brink of profound change. It was in this setting that Tsar Alexander II made his groundbreaking proclamation. In 1861, Tsar Alexander II made a proclamation that would shake the very foundations of Russian society. This wasn't just a casual statement or a mere political move. It was an earth-shattering decree that would forever change the face of Russia. Tsar Alexander II, also known as Alexander the Liberator, issued a manifesto on the 19th of February 1861 that declared the emancipation of the serfs. This proclamation, known as the Emancipation Edict, was not only a bold move, but was also a necessary one. For centuries, serfs were tied to the land, living in a state of perpetual servitude, with their lives and futures dictated by their landlords, but this was about to change. The Emancipation Edict was a comprehensive document, painstakingly drafted to ensure a smooth transition from serfdom to freedom. It declared that the serfs were to be given the rights of free rural inhabitants, granted personal freedom, and were allowed to own property. The serfs were also released from their obligations to the landlords, and instead, they were required to pay a redemption fee to the state, which in turn compensated the landlords. Let's delve a bit into Tsar Alexander II's motivations behind this emancipation. The Tsar was not just driven by humanitarian concerns, but he also recognized the economic inefficiency of serfdom. He believed that a free labor market would stimulate economic growth and modernize Russia. Moreover, the Crimean War had exposed the weaknesses of Russia's feudal system, and the Tsar realized that reforms were necessary for Russia's survival. The immediate effects of this proclamation were profound. The serfs, while initially overjoyed, soon realized the challenges that lay ahead. The redemption payments were burdensome, and many serfs found themselves in a state of debt. The landlords, on the other hand, were not pleased. They had lost a significant portion of their workforce and were compensated with redemption payments that were often less than the actual value of the serfs. And just like that, 23 million serfs were granted their freedom. This marked a significant turning point in Russian history, setting the stage for major social, economic, and political changes in the years to come. The liberation of serfs was not a simple transition. It brought about a series of seismic shifts in Russian society. In the aftermath of the Emancipation Proclamation of 1861, Russian society, as we know it, underwent a dramatic transformation. The serfs, who were now free, found themselves navigating a new world, with unfamiliar freedoms and responsibilities. For the former serfs, Emancipation was a double-edged sword. Yes, they were no longer bound to the land and their landlords, but they were also thrust into a world they were ill-prepared for. Many of them were unable to grasp the concept of owning land and the financial obligations that came with it. They were in a state of flux, caught between the remnants of their past and the promise of their newfound freedom. On the other end of the spectrum were the landlords. They had lost a significant portion of their workforce, and with it, their economic power. Many of them had to sell off portions of their land to recover from the financial blow. Ironically, some of them ended up selling their lands to the very serfs they once owned. The Russian economy too felt the ripple effects of the emancipation. The agricultural sector, which was the backbone of the Russian economy, was hit hard. Yields dropped drastically as the newly freed serfs struggled to cultivate the land efficiently. It was a period of economic instability, with the country grappling to find its footing in this new order. However, a closer look at the landscape reveals another significant shift. Land use in Russia underwent a remarkable change in the aftermath of the emancipation. The serfs, who were now landowners, began to use the land differently. They started to cultivate crops that were more suited to their local conditions, rather than the cash crops demanded by their former landlords. This shift towards more sustainable farming practices marked a significant departure from the exploitative land use patterns of the past. The redistribution of land also led to the emergence of a rural middle class. These were former serfs who had managed to acquire enough land to sustain themselves comfortably. This middle class played a crucial role in the development of rural Russia, contributing to the growth of local economies and communities. The emancipation also had a profound impact on the social fabric of Russia. It laid the groundwork for a more egalitarian society, breaking down the rigid hierarchies of the past. It gave rise to a sense of national identity, with the former serfs now seeing themselves as citizens of a country, rather than subjects of a landlord. In conclusion, the aftermath of the emancipation of the Russian serfs was a period of great upheaval and change. It was a time of struggle and hardship, but also a time of hope and opportunity. The changes that took place during this period reshaped the Russian society and economy in ways that are still evident today. The impact of the emancipation was far-reaching, shaping the future of Russia in profound ways. With the benefit of hindsight, the emancipation of Russian serfs is seen as a critical juncture in Russian history. This one proclamation by Tsar Alexander, a single stroke of the pen, set into motion a transformation that would fundamentally change the very fabric of Russian society. Let's take a moment to reflect on the key points we've discussed. The world of serfdom was one of inequality and subjugation. As serfs, these individuals were tied to the land and to their masters, with limited freedoms and rights. This was their world. Until the day in 1861 when Tsar Alexander made his bold proclamation, liberating an estimated 23 million serfs. The aftermath of the emancipation was a tumultuous period. The serfs were freed, but they were not given land without repayment, and the terms were often harsh. This led to a period of unrest and dissatisfaction, as the newly freed serfs grappled with their newfound freedom and the challenges it brought. Yet, despite these struggles, they were no longer bound to the will of their masters. They were free to carve their own path, to shape their own destiny. The impact of this emancipation on Russian society was profound. It marked the end of an era and the beginning of another. It was a step towards equality, towards freedom, and towards a society where one's birth did not determine one's destiny. It was a step that would eventually lead to the establishment of a more equitable society. The emancipation also had a significant impact on land use in Russia. The serfs, who had once been tied to the land, were now free to move, to explore, and to seek opportunities elsewhere. This resulted in a redistribution of the population and a shift in the agricultural landscape. The lands that were once worked by serfs under the yoke of their masters were now worked by free citizens, contributing to the economy not out of obligation, but out of choice. Reflecting on the emancipation, it's clear that this singular event was a catalyst for change. It set into motion a series of events that would shape the future of Russia, impacting every aspect of society, from the economy to social structure, from land use to individual freedoms. Undeniably, the liberation of Russian serfs in 1861 was a turning point that has left an indelible mark on the pages of Russian history. The echoes of this proclamation can still be heard today, resonating through the annals of time, a testament to the power of change and the enduring spirit of the Russian people.